All right, this question says, what was one result of the election of Andrew Jackson in 1828? So the correct answer here would be J. It increased levels of voter participation. The reason why is because for the first time, a lot of people who had never really voted in the past went out and voted for Andrew Jackson. And there was a lot of reasons for that, right? There was the fact that he was a war hero, that he was someone who represented the common man, stuff like that. So people like actually were motivated to go out and vote for him. And from that point forward, they were motivated to vote for others as well, and so we would say this was like a one like positive result of the election of Andrew Jackson. All right, this question says, what was the primary question surrounding the 1832 nullification crisis? So even if you don't remember all the details of the nullification crisis, what we can at least remember is that to nullify means to basically cancel, right? And so what was being canceled, or what was being thought about canceled, was a federal law. So the correct answer here would be C. Can a state overturn a federal law? Because essentially what was happening was a state was trying to say, well, we don't think this law is fair. We think this law is unconstitutional. So we're not going to follow it, right? We're not going to follow the federal law. However, Jackson argued that any law decided upon by the federal government has to apply to the entire country, and no state can, just cancel it or disobey it. That the federal government is supreme, and that every state in the country must follow federal law. So C is the correct answer here. All right, which shaded state, was the main destination of American Indians forced to relocate as part of the Trail of Tears? So essentially, what this is asking is all those Native Americans who were forced off of their land by the United States, where is it that the U.S. sent those people? Mainly, they sent them to Oklahoma. So C would be the correct answer here. And remember, the reason why is because this land here in Oklahoma that the Native Americans were sent to and given was very poor quality land, right? This was land that white settlers would not have wanted. And so they basically just gave it to the Native Americans as the worst possible situation for them so that white settlers could take all the good land. So C would be the correct answer here. It's just really important to remember where it was that the Native Americans ended up as a result of all of those issues that occurred with Andrew Jackson. Right, according to the Northwest Ordinance, which condition did a U.S. territory have to meet in order to apply for statehood? So this is just something we kind of have to remember. The correct answer would be A, have a population of 60,000 free settlers. And so the idea is that once a place received enough people living there, well, those people need some kind of government. They can't just be out in the Wild West doing whatever they want, right? Once we have a decent amount of people in a place, we want them to be able to create a government where they can make laws and control themselves essentially. And so A would be the correct answer. All right, this question says, which title best completes this list? So we've got a question mark here, looking for the title. And the list says the potential for new markets, an abundance of inexpensive farmland, and the discovery of gold. So all of these things, what they have in common is that these were C, economic motives for manifest destiny policies. Remember, manifest destiny is the belief that the United States was meant to spread west. And so all of these things are reasons why people would be motivated to actually move west, right? Potential for new markets, meaning that there's new places to buy and sell goods. Inexpensive farmland, so people can very easily and very cheaply move out west. And then also the discovery of gold in California is a motivator for a lot of people to go all the way west to settle in California and to try and get rich, basically. Even if not everyone did, this was all reasons why Manifest Destiny became so popular at the time. All right, this question says, which event on the timeline contributed most directly to the outbreak of the U.S.-Mexican War? So we see the first thing is the Indian Removal Act is signed into law. The second is that the American Anti-Slavery Society is founded. Third is the first telegraph message is sent. And then fourth, Texas is admitted to the Union as a slave state. So we're just trying to see which one of these four events contributed, meaning led to most directly, the outbreak of the U.S.-Mexican War. The correct answer would be J, 4, right? Because Texas being admitted to the Union meant that Mexico and the United States now disagreed about where the border was. And because they disagreed, eventually a fight occurred on land that both sides claimed to own. And that was used as essentially the reason for entering a war with Mexico. All right, this question says, which of the following best completes the diagram above? And again, we've got the diagram right here instead. So we've got a Venn diagram with Texas as one circle, California as another circle. So in Texas, it says annexed by the United States in 1845, settlers attracted by free land. And then California was ceded to the United States in 1848, and settlers were attracted by gold. So what is it that these two states have in common? The correct answer would be H. They were both formerly part of Mexico. Remember, Texas gained its independence from Mexico and then became a state. California belonged to Mexico, but we won this land whenever we defeated Mexico and signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And so that would be what is in common here. Both have a sort of a common Hispanic heritage. All right, this question says the growth of railroads during the 19th century affected U.S. businesses by. So remember, anytime we're talking about improved transportation, you're able to move people and products much more easily, right? So in this case, if we're talking about businesses, we're talking more about products, right? If you have a railroad, you can move your stuff further, faster, right? The correct answer here would be J, right? It opened new markets for goods. It meant that if you were a business person, you could buy and sell goods in a much wider area than you could before when you were really more relying on things like carriages and stuff like that. All right, this question says Irish and Chinese immigrants are best remembered for performing which type of labor during the late 19th century? The correct answer would be H, building railroads in Western territories. So remember, building the railroads was a very difficult and not very well paying job. And so a lot of the people that were doing it were immigrants who were just new to this country and looking for opportunities, basically. And so the opportunities that both the Irish and the Chinese took advantage of was building the railroads. All right, this question says which factor accounts for this trend? So what we see is the rural population of the United States. Remember, rural refers to people who are living out in the countryside, who are living very spread out, usually living on farms, things like that. So what's happening to the rural population of the United States over time? We can see that over time, the percentage of the U.S. Population that lives in rural areas is decreasing, which means that people must be moving to more urban areas. They're moving to cities. Now, why would people move to cities? It's because that's where all the jobs were, right? As industrialization occurred, as businesses grew, right, they needed people to fill those jobs, and so people moved to where the jobs were and congregated, concentrated, right, in these more urban cities, and those places grew as a result. So J would be the correct answer here, that the Industrial Revolution encouraged people to pursue jobs in cities.